Hello.
No one else around.
No, I don't think so. Not yet.
Make my profuse apologies for being 5 minutes late, but I've got some kind of computer malfunction. It's just, I don't know what I was doing. I was just trying to tidy up all the various excessive number of windows I had open to started to behave uncertainty, so I did a quick shutdown and restart. Anyway, Ben.
Hello.
Morning.
How are you, Ben?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Yourself?
Good, yeah. It's really sunny here.
No, really, no, not so nice up in Glasgow. But what's new? You enjoyed your time off between? I suppose we had a meeting last week. Yeah, I couldn't make that.
It was very nice time off though, yes.
Mm.
Well, the time off is probably the wrong word. I just worked on different.
Yeah, I was going to say, I realized you said that. There's no such thing. It's just different priorities.
But no, it was good. Oh yeah, so you might have missed last week. The document called combined feedback is where I put all the comments we have. And then, what we've done this week is try to reduce the comments. And then I've kind of archived everything else because I felt like there were too many documents.
Yeah, it starts getting confusing what the latest version.
And yeah, if people need something, they can dig around for it and resurrect. But yeah.
Yeah, Peter sent me an email updating me on what you'd done. So I think on my section there was just one comment from, was it Graham possibly? No, it wasn't Graham. Possibly Hanson.
Yeah, Hans. Yeah.
I just felt that needed a bit more discussion about whether we need to write another paragraph or whether it's something for the
I think most of Hans's
or
comments stayed in.
Yeah.
They weren't quick solutions.
They're really useful, but it's just knowing what to do with them.
You need to think about it a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonder how many we'll have today. I wonder if there's school beginnings and things like that today.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Valerie definitely said she couldn't make it, actually. I just remembered.
Yeah.
And I know Carrie Ann now teaches on Tuesdays, but it wasn't clear to me if that was teaching undergraduates or her own children. So may or may not still be continuing.
Or both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a lot of tidying.
Yeah, it was quite ruthless. But I haven't deleted anything. It's just, just moved it all. Do feel free to resurrect anything that is still useful.
Yeah. The general comments of Hans, I thought I'd put as much of them as should go into the introduction here. I was thinking, I'm trying to get a start on an overall introduction to the volume, and I was thinking the same point needs mentioning there. So when I've written something for that, I might come back to what's said in 10 too. So it's so everything is said, but there isn't too much overlap. Yeah. Yes. Well, the how, yes, I was thinking that, just looking at the two general comments you've got remaining there. So
Yeah, Chris Dye's comment.
Well, I mean, the thing, I was in trying to check out the references. I went and looked back at this Global Health Index, where they published this thing in October 2019, which turned out to be so completely wrong as to which countries were prepared. I mean, it's I think it's partly a sort of lesson about box ticking assessments, because it was it was terribly thorough. They went through 100 and something countries, and for each one they went through some large number of questions and whether they had this and whether they'd done that and all the rest of it. And they seemed to think that told you whether these countries were actually prepared for pandemic. And you could look at them and think, well, they should, but they didn't. And they and the newspaper article I sort of picked it up from seemed pretty emphatic in saying that it really came down to leadership or the politics. So I suppose that means that we're not supposed to be writing about politics per se, but I suppose the lesson for modelers is you've really got to feed up the facts in a holistic sort of way, so as to make it difficult for the politicians to do other than take a sort of balanced decision. And my hobby horse is that you really got to tie in the economic and other effects with your model scenario. And on that, I'm trying to remember, one of the references I think we ought to quote was one of these. I think it's the WHO's own sort of interim report. The thing that came out last month, maybe.
Oh yes, you sent an email around about it.
Yeah. And I think that may be the one that's pretty emphatic that the idea that there's a choice between minimizing, doing the best with the disease, and doing the best with the economy is a false one. That actually, you want to do the best for the economy, you do the best for getting rid of the disease, which I know not everyone agrees with, and I've rather tried to keep out of the economics paper, but I feel I need to go back and see whether they're saying the complete opposite.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But the outstandingly duff thing about the general health, global health index was how the particular criterion in which the UK came out streets ahead of every other country was in the ability to take a quick to rapid response and mitigate the effects of a pandemic. So on paper we were, it was, for some reason the figure they gave was actually up in the 90%, and no other country was better than the high 70s. So this shows that getting things right on paper doesn't have enough to do with getting things right in practice.
Yeah, I think we should definitely mention those things either in the
Maybe it's time
introduction
to wrap
or
up in the conclusions. Maybe
conclusion. Yeah.
I think in the conclusions, one could come back and say that we've tried to give a view of how scientists can help prepare for the next pandemic, but the example, the Global Health Service Index business shows really that the last resort, that how politicians actually respond to the advice is makes all the difference, and that and therefore try and make the point that well, something along the lines I was saying a minute or two ago, that you've really got to offer sort of holistic advice that really covers all the bases, so that to make it as difficult as possible for the politicians not to take decisions that take everything into account properly.
Yeah, agreed. Would be a good way to
Yeah.
wrap up. Yeah.
I think it'd be a good note to end on. Here we are. Here we are as modelers and scientists doing our best to be helpful, but at the end of the day, it's going to be up to leadership and
Yeah.
politicians and public trust, and we can emphasize how important those things are, but it's not up to us to deliver them.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do
Okay.
this morning? We could take them all.
Yes.
Uh,
Well, I don't know if sort of in two minds. I feel like lots of these things we probably want to discuss as a wider group.
yeah, but if we haven't got a wider group.
Yeah, I feel like.
Yeah. Liz, what's your sort of overview of where the sections have got to in terms of both progress in themselves and also fitting together or failing to fit together?
I think they fit together quite well.
Lost touch with some of the later sections. I know people have been working on them.
10. The only one that's likely to have major changes is 10.7.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So
we're waiting for Frank's comments back on that, are we?
Yeah. So Frank Kelly has kindly offered to get some sort of insight from another chief scientific advisor that he knows, who's just finished in government and should have some sort of insight on how things have been working. I think Frank said it was the Home Office CSA.
Yeah.
Might be able to provide some comments on 10.7, because that's sort of where we didn't have much feedback.
Yeah.
And I think either Frank is chatting directly with Chris because they know each other, or we'll hear something shortly on that one. But I think I think a lot of the other sections are progressing well. Yeah. And we're just incorporating the final comments will make them stronger, but I think Valerie's decision to force us all to use the same format has made the paper feel a lot more cohesive.
Yeah.
What else was I going to say? The only one that's a bit short is 10.5, understanding interacting factors. I think I can add in a lot more there on, link a bit more in the economics and behavioral stuff. So I went to one of the economics meetings last week, and Kira's leading on that paper, and we had a sort of discussion afterwards. I'm going to see if I could sort of add a bit more in, or encourage them to add a bit more in and then reference it. And I'll do the same with the lead on the interventions paper. So I think we can bulk this section out just a little bit more, even if we're just
I think so.
cross-referencing.
I think it's important.
Yeah, it's very short by itself, but I think we should make it a bit more substantial. the what do you call them? Economists. The economists
Mm.
hadn't discussed anything on policy yet because they kind of assumed that it was going to be discussed in the policy paper. But I think I'm going to encourage them to have those discussions and find out what they would say, because we don't have any economists in our group. And that might be more appropriate for their paper, and we can cross-reference it.
Yeah.
Is the likely way forwards. And then Kira said there's not a specific behaviour paper, but the interventions is probably the closest.
Yeah, the last section in the interventions paper is to do with economics, I think. Is it Matthew that's working on that, Dennis?
Okay.
I think he's done some work on economic interventions, so he might be somebody else you could ask if he's not part of the economics paper.
Oh, that's a good idea. Okay. Yeah. And then I was going to email, I think Marja, is she leading the
Miriam.
Miriam? Oh, sorry, I've
Miriam.
remembered wrong. Miriam. Yeah, I was going to contact her and get some feedback on that as well. Just so that it occurred to me that we were talking in the policy paper about how it's very important for sort of different areas of science to link up. And it occurred to me I hadn't spoken to the other papers, so I was somewhat hypocritical. So I'll make a point of doing that. So we have at least seen what
we're
they're
saying
writing.
it's a challenge. It's a challenging the naming, so
Yeah.
fine if you haven't done
Well,
it.
I think it would be less of a challenge if I spoke to them. So,
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm hoping after those conversations, either there'll be a few more references or something more to say.
I think.
Yeah. So just kind of glossed over at the moment. It's not really our area of expertise, but we can.
I think actually
on that.
we're sort of reading each other's papers and thinking, you know, how are these relating together? It is a sort of generally useful thing, and I would, if it means a little bit more time while everyone does that and goes back and considers whether they need to change their papers, I think, you know, if that meant that all the papers got submitted 2 weeks later, I would think that would be better than
worthwhile.
Yeah, it'd be worthwhile, because otherwise you might come back after. Otherwise, you could end up a complete mess with comments effectively telling you to do that from referees, but everything being at different stages, so it was difficult to keep it coordinated. So I think we may not feel like we've got much control of how everyone's progressing, but I think we maybe have slightly more than we might in those circumstances.
Yeah, I was definitely pleased that I attended the economics discussion, because beforehand I felt the paper was going really well, and then I immediately realized that we'd not addressed some of these points. So it was certainly useful to see other discussions. And then I think the other section is doing rather well. I don't know if the next step, so I think we agree that we want to leave the sort of major comments for larger group discussions.
Yeah.
Perhaps next week, yeah. I guess the kind of two things that would be useful at some point this month would be for us each to do a sort of independent review, like we did with the modelling paper. And the second option could be to sort of split up into subgroups to kind of discuss a few more sections in detail, because I'm aware that we've written one each. Do either of you have any other things or different things that you think we might want to do?
Not
Yeah,
particularly. I think that's the main.
I mean, I think it could be quite useful to come back to the main comments made by people like Hans and Frank and so on, and just see whether we feel we've taken proper account of them.
Yeah, I guess there's not much point doing an internal review until we've
Yeah.
got a slightly more formal.
Fewer
Wow.
comments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so you know, it'd be nice really to be able to get to a version in which we removed all the comments, and maybe, you know, and maybe had an accompanying memo or something which just sort of said, here are some bits of the main comments made which we haven't taken into account, but that's because we either don't agree with them or we think they should go somewhere else. And yeah, I mean, just a stack of you know, you just call it orphaned comments.
Yeah. Do we think it would be helpful to try to meet up in small subgroups before Tuesday to maybe reduce the number of comments? Because I know a lot of people seem to have increasingly many commitments on a Tuesday, but they send me lots of emails, so I'm sure that other times will probably be better. I wonder if that might be feasible.
Or
and then
offline
you can
discussions, even
exactly
discussions via email with a few select group of people, then that would be worthwhile. So then we're still on target with your timeline.
Yeah. I think it would just be a good opportunity to look a bit closer at if you only have to look at 2 or 3 rather than the whole paper.
Definitely.
Oh, Frank has just sent something. Okay, I think we might just have, I've just had some feedback from Frank, but I'll look at that after. Okay, so maybe we leave the sort of major discussions for next week, remaining major discussions, and try to have sort of small subgroups for this week, hopefully dealing with some of the kind of smaller comments or something like working on the wording and things. Yeah.
Want to do you want to do you think it might be, would it be possible to say divide up the discussions we want to have into 3 groups of sections and maybe even assign people or something, and then maybe pick on some easy to choose times, like tomorrow, like 10 o'clock, 11. I've got something in the middle of the day, so I mean, for me, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and 4 o'clock would each of them work. So you have a sort of hours slot, and just say, we think the small groups, you know, and so for instance, you know, Ben and these 2 other people could please discuss 10.3 and 10.4, you know, whatever it might be, at 11 o'clock tomorrow. If that doesn't suit you, you know, interact with Ben.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean.
Interact with Ben to choose some time later in the week.
Yeah.
You mean force a time upon people so that they're forced to do
some structure. Put
up a suggested, try a suggested timetable. And then we just need to decide whether to use the formal or the informal discussion thing. I don't think the formal one's being used, so we could use, which is the one that gets recorded, which actually would perhaps be helpful if people are only going to some of them. So, see what I mean? Just tell people that the link they will use is the bulletin's discussion link. That's the default.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that seems like a good idea. Okay, would it make sense for the 3 of us to be 3 separate groups then, as we're?
Maybe.
Yeah.
You want me to do
as we've agreed on that.
1 and 2 and well, tentatively conclusions, I suppose, because it's there may be stuff that's a question of whether it goes in the introduction or the conclusion. That might make one natural lot. I think Valerie should be involved in that, and anyone else who wants to, obviously.
Are you thinking 0, 1? And
So
the conclusion?
0, 1, and yeah, introduction and first section and conclusion.
Yeah.
2, pencil, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6, 7. But I don't know whether those whether that's a sensible, or whether you want to split it into more than that.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
I think.
But I think that's quite good. I think that's quite good, because I think then if you split it between the three, have 3 sessions split between the 3 of us, then I think we know what we're trying to.
Yeah.
We can kind of
just trying to get comments on the sections we were assigned and how they're going to relate to other papers and the rest of this paper, with a view to and try and sort out, let's call them minor comments, and focus on things, and maybe end up with an agenda of 1 or 2 big things we'd like the group to discuss next Tuesday. So it could involve both hopefully a bit of rewriting of the sections you're doing, but also and being more prepared for next Tuesday.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because looking at the current draft, we still have a lot of comments. So I think subgroups is enough for some of those to be dealt with.
Well, as I say, I'm fairly clear in my own mind as to how much I've taken into account, how much more there is to take into account of the big comments on the introduction. But yeah, other people might disagree. They might think I've missed a point or something. And so
yeah. Okay, so let's go for that. I can send out an email. Oh, do you want to suggest suggested times?
Well, my suggestions for tomorrow, just totally selfishly, I mean, hours I could do are the hours beginning 10, 11, and 4. But
I can do 10.
But if I leave you 2 in charge of what I'm calling 11, if I take 10 o'clock and leave you to 11 and 4, you can change to something else. It's just if it's those times, I'll maybe try to at least dip in. But I think it's more important that you get whoever you think is most appropriate to.
Yeah.
So the way I'd word it is try and say that if you think you can reasonably have a hit list of 2 or 3 people you'd really like to be involved in that discussion, to really name them, and then say anyone else, of course, is welcome to come along. But can we please try and find an occasion when at least these 3 people can.
Yeah. So I guess for intro 1 and conclusion, Dennis, you want yourself, Valerie, and I'd also quite like to join that one.
Yeah, sure.
And then obviously we can offer to anyone else who wants to. And then Ben, I think for 5, if Kira, I think it would be worth extending the invitation to Kira, who's running the economics paper, because she was keen on attending some of the policy discussions, so she might be able to help there. At least give her the option.
Yeah, and I should, and I think if you're trying to get Kira involved, you probably want to really try and find a time that suits her, because she's got other responsibilities and childcare and all that kind of stuff. So, it's possible Wednesday mornings are good for her, because Wednesday morning she's tending to move our organisers catch-up slot too. So if you end up wanting to bump me out of 10 o'clock, let me know.
And then I guess I'll say Peter, Chris, and me, 5, 6, 7.
Yep,
Yep.
sure. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I can do 10 or 4 tomorrow. I can't do 11. Or 3 o'clock as well. I can do if we're avoiding.
Yeah, I
Well,
can do 10 or 3.
If Dennis doesn't need to be there, then 3 o'clock's fine.
Yeah. Or 10 is fine.
That's fine
And
as
then
well,
2,
yeah.
3, 4 is Duncan, Kerry Ann and myself. Okay. So what time did you want, Ben? 3?
Yeah, 3 o'clock's fine if
Yeah.
that's okay with you.
Yeah. Well, I'll just pop it in the email.
I
And
might
then
be-
Yeah,
as a
that's
suggestion.
fine. But
Yeah.
I might be free. I'm actually, it's an environmental organisation, so just economics discussions, so it might even be relevant. It's quite a long week. It might have finished by then.
What time did you want, Dennis?
I'd go for 10, but if Kira wants 10, then I can.
And then I'll choose another time for the other group. Okay. Yeah, let's leave it there.
Okay.
Sounds good.
If you want to bounce a draft email off on the 2 of us, maybe do that. Just
yeah, make it clear that these are suggested times, not emergency
Yeah.
meetings in 24 hours.
Okay. Well, particularly, we might have a look down the people in the group just in case you've missed someone or something like that. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
See you soon.
I'll see you all in the subgroups.
Yeah.
Hopefully see you tomorrow then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.